Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. So we have been discussing the book of divorce, and we have discussed the forms of talaq, the forms of ruju, which is taking your wife back after a couple wants to reconcile their divorce, the conditions, the forms. Now, in the books of fiqh, you will find some topics which are not really relevant in our times and our culture, because they speak about issues which are not commonly practiced in our time. Among these is what's called ila, which is a husband swears that he will not touch his wife. And in this case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him 4 months to decide if he wants to fulfill the rights of his wife or not. After 4 months, he has to either decide to divorce her, or he has to maintain and normalize relations with her. If he does not do either, then every day that he continues to be in this state, he continues to be in a state of sinfulness and committing haram in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another one of these issues is called zihar, which is where a man says to his wife when they are maybe angry, they are having a fight, and he says something to her like, "You are like the back of my mother," meaning, na'udhu billah, none of us would ever approach our mother in an inappropriate way, in a lustful way. So basically what he would say is that, "I'm never going to approach you because now you're like my mother. That's it, we're done." But he's not necessarily divorcing her. And this is again something which is not practiced. Anybody ever heard of anybody doing this in our time? No, it doesn't. It's one of those cultural things that used to happen back in those days. So the books of fiqh still mention them. So I just have one line over there where we don't really need to discuss that. If anybody is thinking about doing something like that, please don't do it. That's it. The punishment for it, the penalty for it, is that a person has to free a slave. If he is unable to free a slave, then he has to fast 60 days consecutively. So it's a very heavy penalty. So just, if things are not getting along, there are other ways. There's another thing called li'an. Li'an is when a person would, in a court of Islamic justice, in a court of justice, Islamic court, a person would accuse their wife of committing adultery, cheating. And this happened in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And the standard rule is that if any man accuses any woman of this act, they have to bring 4 witnesses that have witnessed the act taking place. So when this one Sahabi said this to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ said to him that you have to bring me 4 witnesses for what you have just said, or we have to give you the punishment of accusing a chaste woman. This is the rule. So he said that, "Ya Rasulullah, if a man sees his wife, na'udhu billah, in this, is he supposed to go and find 4 other people to come and witness this?" And his query was responded to by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a way out for this case, where a husband, na'udhu billah, does not have to go and find those witnesses, but rather he can go in a court of law, in an Islamic court of law, and he will swear to Allah 4 times that what he is saying is true, and may the punishment of Allah be upon him if he is lying. And then she is asked that, okay, either you say yes or you say no. If she says yes, she gets the punishment. If she says no, then she has to swear 4 times that he is telling a lie. And the 5th time she says, if he is telling the truth, may the ghadab, the anger of Allah be upon me. If that happens, then these 2 are separated from each other forever, and they can never get married again. Okay? That's the end of li'an. Then there's a chapter on establishing paternity as to whose child it is. And again, this is one of those matters we don't really have to worry about it much. There are some rulings which may need to be looked at in more detailed cases, but generally speaking, back in the days, they did not have DNA, they did not have blood tests, they did not have all these type of things where you can easily and quickly tell, okay, who exactly is the father in case there is any ambiguity in that matter. So we'll quickly talk about the rules of the waiting period, which is called the iddah. One of the wisdoms of the iddah is to make pregnancies known in case if there was a chance of pregnancy that a woman does not get out of one marriage and the next day gets married to someone else, and then a few months later she has a child, but it's not known as to who the father of this child is. So that gap will make it clear if she is expecting, and if it was too early, if it was not clear in the beginning, the gap of 3 months to 4 months and 10 days will make it abundantly clear if there is a possibility of pregnancy or not. It also, in case of talaq and iddah, allows for a chance of reconciliation, that in case they want to get back together, they can get back together by the process of ruju', which we discussed already. In case of khul, or khula, or talaq, or death, in iddah has to be observed. What is the khula, or what is the iddah of the khul, or the khula? What is the iddah? Anyone remembers? No. It is one cycle, roughly about 30 to 45 days. Okay? It is one cycle in case where it is the wife that asks for getting out of this marriage. In case of talaq, the iddah is 3 cycles, or roughly about 60 to 90 days, depending on how the cycles come. And in case of death of the husband, the iddah is 4 months and 10 days. What is she supposed to do during the waiting period? She is supposed to stay in the house of marriage in case of talaq and in case of death, unless it is necessary for her to move out. Unless it is necessary for her to move out. If she needs to go outside, she needs to take care of all outside needs during daytime and not during nighttime. So maybe she doesn't have any help, she needs to do groceries, maybe she's feeling depressed, she needs some fresh air, she needs some sunlight, she just lost her husband and now she's locked in her house as well. The Prophet ﷺ allowed them, the widows of Uhud, he said that you can meet with each other in anyone's house during the daytime, but return home before it gets dark. Return home before it gets dark. Also, they need to avoid anything during their waiting period, such as dressing up, makeup, fragrance, speech or actions that will attract the attention of non-mahram men. Also, she should not appear in places and she should not be with people who are whose character may raise questions about her character. Okay, so let's say that she is there's a lady who is a known matchmaker. Okay, even if she's a lady, and this lady, they don't know each other, they're not friends or relatives or anyone, but this lady is going to her house. Okay, people will say, hey, what's going on there? So she shouldn't do anything that will raise any questions about her character, and that would also cause anyone else to have desire or doubts about her, desire towards her or doubts about her as to what exactly is going on. If you think about, if someone is widowed and you find out 2 weeks later that she got remarried or she's engaged, you're like, wait, what? What's going on here? We need to open up that investigation as to how that man died. So there is a certain period that Allah has given that you complete that period and then she is free. During this time, no direct proposals are allowed. No direct proposals are allowed, but hints can be given. So For example, a person can say, a person can send a message to her. She shouldn't be meeting with any non-mahram men. But let's say there's a non-mahram man who wants to marry her, and he is worried that maybe someone else will propose for her, or maybe she might leave the country, she might go back to her family, or whatever the case is. So he wants to give her some message, but he's not allowed to make a direct proposal, and she's not allowed to accept a direct proposal. But he could send her a message, something like, such and such man says that he would be very happy to have a wife like you. Okay? Just that much of a hint, qawlan ma'rufa. So that she gets the point that, okay, there is someone interested. She can think about it if she wants, but nothing can be done officially until her iddah is finished. But when her iddah finishes, there's no problem if she gets married the next morning. She can get married. If her iddah finishes, let's say in midday, because her husband had died at midday, 4 months and 10 days complete at midday at Dhuhr time, she can get married after Dhuhr, no problem. Islamically, no problem. But up until then, she cannot do anything like that. The next issue is the fiqh of nursing and breastfeeding. And again, we are going through these things quickly. The Prophet ﷺ said that all things which become unlawful because of blood relations are also unlawful because of the corresponding foster breastfeeding relations. Meaning that if breastfeeding occurs, then every relative that is haram for you to marry also becomes haram for you through the breastfeeding relationship as well. So that woman who breastfeeds a child, in the issue of marriage, she takes the place of his mother. So her sister, her daughter, everyone else will apply, and they will fit in the same way. The conditions that make breastfeeding effective and legal and accountable countable. Number one is that the baby must have 5 sucklings. And number 2, that the suckling must take place while the child is less than 2 years old. Now here, there is a modern issue that has come up, which is the issue of so many Muslim orphans in places like Syria and Gaza and other places like that, major natural disasters. And a lot of Muslims are... a lot of these Muslim kids are being adopted by non-Muslim families. So some of the scholars have said that there needs to be some sort of, there are other opinions on this matter, and in cases of need, you may rely on a minority opinion. So for example, there is an opinion out there which is that in case you are adopting a child who is, let's say, 8 years old. Now, this child is going to be a non-mahram when he grows up in this house. And you have a daughter, you have daughters, and they are going to be living and growing up together. So how do you resolve that matter? So there is an opinion which is that, there are like lactation, medical shots that a lady would start to flow with milk. And that milk could be taken, even put in a cup, and that baby can drink it, that child can drink it, even older than 2, and this would then basically, it would be the next best solution to adopting that child at birth or when that child was still a baby. Now, of course, it's a little bit of a stretch, right? But basically, the idea behind this stretch is that there is a much bigger need, which is that many Muslims will not adopt a boy if they have a daughter at home. And many Muslims will not adopt girls if they have boys at home. And of course, the boy and the girl will be non-mahram for the mother, father. So the alternative is that these kids are either suffering in orphanages, which are often not taken care of very well, and on top of that, they're being adopted by non-Muslim families. Churches have entire adoption programs. They encourage people to go because they say that we have the burden of humanity on our shoulders, that we have to save these savages and bring them to Christ. So by hook or by crook, even when they took slaves, they said we are bringing these slaves into Christianity and saving them from hellfire. So these are different discussions to think about. But of course, if anybody is thinking about that, then there are more things to be considered and discussed. Now, quickly we'll discuss just two slides on the custody of minor children. Now, in Islam, the custody of minor children, this question is only about children who are under the age of tamyiz. And what is the age of tamyiz? Age of distinction? It is, what is it? Generally speaking, it is 7 years old. So basically, the Hanbali school that we are looking at here says that at the age of 7, you don't have to fight over custody. You just ask the child, who do you want to be with? This question of who the child should go with is only for a child who is under the age of 7. Even if that child is 5 years old, but a very smart child, very a mature child, if they if they know the difference between right and wrong, which is generally the age of tamyiz, then you can ask them, okay, who do you want to go with? And basically don't force a child to be where they don't want to be. All right. Custody is the protection of a child or a mentally ill adult. Okay, in some cases it could be an adult as well. And the like, preventing any harm from befalling him or her, bringing him or her up through seeing to his physical and moral needs. Since children cannot take care of themselves, someone has to take care of them. In case a divorce occurred between the mother and the father, who does the child go with? So according to Ibn Qudama, who is the authority in the Hanbali madhab, who is a authority in the Hanbali madhab, one of the major ones, according to his opinion, and there are many other scholars that have followed this, it is that the mother has the right to have the minor child under her care. So now, what are we talking about? We're not talking about a 10-year-old child. We're talking about a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old child. In this case, the mother is the first person to take custody because it is agreed upon by human wisdom that mothers are better able and better fitted to take care of their child. But in case there's an exception, let's say for some reason this mother is sick, this mother is unable or unwilling to do it, then in that case, of course, the secondary chains will come in. But of course, the first and the primary one is mother, because of course, a little baby should be with the mother. It's just a no-brainer. She's expected to be the most kind and the most tender to that child, more than even the father. Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhuma, he says that this is until the age of discretion, and then the child is given a choice. Now, if the mother is unable or unwilling or not available for whatever reason, then it would be the mother's mother. Okay, so the mother's mother, the maternal grandmother. If she is not available or not willing, then it would be the father. If the father is not available, then the father's mother, so the maternal grandmother. If she's not available or unwilling, then paternal grandfathers. Then mother of grandfathers. Of course, most people will not have that many, but back in the days, they used to have kids, so sometimes you would have 5 or 6 generations living together. You know, they get married at the age of like 10, 12 and have a child. So they would have basically so many generations there. Nowadays, we don't really see that. If all of them are not available for some reason, then the sister and the full sister and then the half sister. If she's not available, then the maternal aunts, then the paternal aunts. And if the ward or if the child is a female, then the custody must go to a mahram. It cannot go to a non-mahram. Okay, if the child is a female, then it cannot. The custody cannot go to a non-mahram. If the person who is in line to get their custody happens to be a slave or someone who is a disobedient, a fasik, a sinful person, or So these are blockers of custody. They will not get the custody by default. If the mother has the child, she has the right to have the custody of this child as long as she does not get married to a man who is not from the father's family. Okay, what does that mean? So the idea is that, let's say a man died, left behind a child. His wife is now taking care of this child. She has the custody of this child. But she then gets remarried, and she gets remarried to her husband who died, to his brother or his cousin or someone from his family. So that person will look at this child as a kind of his own child, because it's like, it's my brother's child. Okay? In this case, she can continue to have the custody. But if she marries anyone else outside of his family, outside of his tribe, they would say, then that custody could be challenged. And the father or the father's family might say, you know what, now, and you know what, subhanAllah, even in our time, stepfathers, there's a possibility, there's lots of bad stories about someone having a boyfriend or a stepfather and leaving the child at home with them alone, and bad things happening at home. So basically, that's exactly what is being considered here. Again, all of this up to the age of 7. So if the mother gets married to a man outside the father's relatives, then she could also be blocked from having custody as well. Now, of course, she's supposed to be getting support for the child while she has the custody from the father, or from the father's inheritance and the child's own inheritance as well. At the age of 7, the child can choose who they want to go with. And the child choosing one parent means that this parent is probably more merciful and kind to them. Okay, but remember, then it could be challenged, because it could be like one parent says, okay, I'm going to give you an iPhone, I'm going to give you video games, I will give you all the candies, and that kid says, okay, that's the one that I want to go with. But the other parent can challenge that and say that this is not mercy, this is the opposite of mercy. Because this parent is spoiling, because ultimately what is concerned is that the welfare of the child. Visitations cannot be prevented by either parent within reasonable limits. So it's never a good idea for any parent to prevent visitation. Whatever is reasonable, both parents should accommodate, and they should not make drama around this. Right? If things didn't work out between a man and a wife, now they're divorced, but they have a child, don't allow your drama to spill into the life of the child, but rather in front of the child, just work together, cooperate, and don't allow them to feel that my parents hate each other, can't see each other, and every time there's a transfer, there's like a big drama happening. There's no need for that type of stuff. There are more details to this, but this should suffice to give us a general overview of the concept of custody in Islam. And I think that's it for today. Inshallah, we'll stop here. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Yes. So with regards to the first question, which is the Ibn Qudama, so when we started this fiqh class, we mentioned that there are different opinions, but we're going to choose one and we're going to follow that to make it easy and simple. And then you can go and explore more. But these are the general rules that other scholars generally agree with. They might have a nitty-gritty differences, but these are all based on basically evidences that other scholars accept as well. So we can look into more details if there's a problem about that. Second question that you have with regards to the custody of a child who's younger than 2. So the child who's younger than 2 needs a breastfeeding woman, but doesn't necessarily have to be his mom, right? So she has the most right to breastfeed her child, but if there's a problem, for example, she is not interested, that happens. For example, she's not available. Maybe whatever problem there is, meaning she cannot use that to hijack the situation against the interest of the child. Okay, the child interest is number one. Na'udhu billah, may Allah protect us. But there are cases that I know of where, for example, the mother is addicted to drugs. So whatever she's smoking and shooting up, that actually is going to end up going into the child. Okay? So in this case, does this mother still have the right to breastfeed her child? No, absolutely not. Okay? So that child needs nursing, but doesn't necessarily have to be his mother. So if there are any other problems in her having custody, then yes, she could lose custody. But of course, Islam will always encourage mercy for the child and mercy for the mother, as long as no one is being harmed. Wallahu alam. So there are scholars and even like modern education theory that says that a child will learn, they will learn the most in the first 5 years of their life, more than they will ever learn in life. So the idea used to be that, for example, if the woman, for example, na'udhu billah, left Islam, or she's an open sinner, then the father would say, look, I don't want that shadow on my child growing up. I'll handle the nursing from somewhere else, but raise the child in a good household. Wallahu alam. Jazakumullah khair. Yes, brother.